Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, and back on the show. He took a week off, basically, none other than Mr. Ted Yoho. First of all, glad to have you back, Ted. How are you, and what you been up to?
Glad to be here, John. Good to see you, and I was up in D.C. for 3 days this past week, so I couldn't be here on Monday. I flew in about the time the show started, and a lot is going on. There's a lot of concerns up there about a lot of things, but it's kind of like business as usual, except that the outcomes are worse, when you look at what's going on in Congress. So we can talk a lot about that. I know you got a great program. Look forward to getting into it. And I'll turn it back over to you, man.
I think I might have seen you up there, but it was in one of those teenage bum rush things. They were like taking over a part of D.C. I thought I saw you running down the sidewalk, but maybe not.
It wasn't me. It didn't look like me. Plausible deniability. I wasn't there.
It wasn't you. Okay. Well, I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, let me just put out a plug for ourselves, the Political Pirate Podcast. You'll see a little moniker pop up there every so often that says Call Freddie. And what that's all about is you coming on board, sponsoring the show so we can keep this message moving forward. That's what we want to do, right, Ted?
And absolutely. Our goal is to educate, motivate, and activate people. I can't tell you what's going on. I mean, I think everybody knows what's going on in this country. And I was talking to some people up there in D.C. and they said, we're at a point now where this country will never be the same. What going through, it's not just in this country, but it's all over the world. There is a tectonic shift in world powers and world thought. People are separating from old relationships like NATO, the European Union, and it's interesting to see how people are shunning the United States because we've taken a strong stand. Whether you like it or not, we're in it, the Iran war. And it's one of those things that was eventually going to be a war, or, worse, Iran would have had a nuclear bomb and they would have used it. They would not have hesitated because their goal is to go be a martyr and go up to meet Allah and claim their 72 virgins. It's an ideological war. And it's one that's based on their religion, and that's there's no doubt they would have used that.
Yeah, well,
bomb, at some point we had to do that.
No doubt. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Iran war in just a moment. But as usual, when you're back on the show and being the captain, you sparked something in me. But while you were
good.
I was thinking about something I talked a little bit about when I was doing the solo act early on Monday, that I talked to a bunch of young people, and they basically feel like, that we're in uncharted territory and all of that kind of stuff, and that the United States is failing, and maybe it is, and all of that, and that it's such a dangerous world and all. And I don't mean to discount any of that, but if you think about it, basically 300 years ago was about the time that this North America, South America started being colonized by the Europeans and all that. There's debates about when they first came and all of that stuff, but that's roughly when it really kind of got kicked into high gear. Before that, most of the world was somewhat isolated from each other. There were skirmish wars. The Europeans have been fighting each other for as long as they've been alive. And the same thing over in Asia and everything else. So there's this concept that somehow we've had world peace in the past, which is really not true. And you would think, Ted, after, about 1910, when World War II started, World War I started kicking off, and then subsequently World War II, and then the Cold War and all of that kind of stuff, you think we would learn our lesson. I'm talking about we, people in general, not just the United States, but people in general would learn our lesson that we're kind of stuck on this planet right now together, and we got to find a way to peacefully coexist somehow. But that seems to elude us, doesn't it?
It really does. And you said the young people are feeling like we're in uncharted territory, and a lot of us elderly people feel that too. But as you pointed out, John, this is not uncharted territory if you look throughout history. It just seems there's a conflict every 80 years roughly, and we're at the verge of that when you look at the close of World War II. And the important thing is, if you, as you brought up, if you look through history, you look through the history of the United States, there was the Revolutionary War, there was Shays' Rebellion, there were the excise tax, the liquor tax, where there were rebellions in the United States, and these were massive rebellions, but they always came together. Then Andrew Jackson in the I think it was the 1840s, whenever it was the secession of South Carolina, they were almost at a civil war at that point. It might have been 1842, I think it is. And then we had the Civil War. And then we went through, in this country, we went through, the Vietnam era, the civil rights. We went through all these conflicts, and we've always come out a stronger country. But what's going on now is on the world stage, and there's a lot of things going on. You look at the aggression of Russia, you look at the isolation of North Korea, but the threats of nuclear weapons, and they have them. You look at what Iran's been saying for 47 years. Death to America. You look at what Iran has done. They're the largest sponsor of state terrorism around the world, starting with Beirut, where they killed over 200 service members and members of the embassy. And these proxy wars they have been funding all over the world. They're in South America. They're in Cuba. They're there, and they're not going to back off, because it's a religious war to them. They have to kill the infidels, and that's anybody that doesn't submit to Islam. And so these things, as new as they seem, or this is new territory, it is for this generation. But in the scope of humanity, it's an old story being repeated again. And like you said, how do we get out of this peacefully so that we can go on and do those things? We just had the historic Artemis launch a couple of weeks ago. The pride that we had, not just as Americans, but as humanity, that we're pushing the envelope in discovery and research and things like that. Those are the things we should focus on, not these age-old fights of who's got the bigger gun or the bigger stick or the bigger club. And we should look at working together to advance humanity, not tear it apart again.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in Iran and Epic Fury and all. If you just listen to the mainstream media, especially the left, which is about 95% or more of it, we're losing the war. We're losing the war. Iran has the upper hand. Nothing positive is going to come out of this. It's going to be perpetual war. You know the thing. But there's actually, I think, some positive things that have come out of this war already. And I want to just go down a list of them, and we'll talk about each one individually. And I think at the top of the list has to be, and you kind of mentioned it, no nukes. That Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, is not going to have one for the foreseeable future, definitely wants one, and I think I've made a pretty good point, definitely would use one if they had it. But that right there off the top is a very positive thing. Your thoughts on that?
Well, no, they would. The positive things that have come out of this is there is no more BS. You look at the Biden or Obama year when they did the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which they said was a treaty. It was never ratified. So it wasn't a treaty. It was an agreement that Obama made. Iran could continue to enrich uranium. the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, could monitor and view and monitor that stuff anytime they wanted, anywhere, any place. But that never happened. They kept enriching. They had hidden sites where they were doing this, and now they're at 90 or 60% enriched uranium. And we've talked about this before. If you're going to use a peaceful nuclear program, if it's for peace, it's going to be out in the open. If it's for nefarious things or creating weapons, it becomes a covert operation, and that's what Iran did. And so with the JCPOA that was in there under Obama, it was a disastrous program. Should never been in there. Trump was right to get rid of it. And the media, as you brought up, we're losing, we're losing, we're losing. No, we're readjusting. um, um, it's kind of like getting rid of a cancer. You know, it was something that was not going to go away. And if you ignore it, it's only going to kill you. So it's time to take care of it and do the surgery and get rid of it.
Yeah. And what, talking about the media, excuse me, again, what really gets me too is whenever there's something that is undeniably positive, I think about like rescuing those two airmen and how we did that. It's
Sure.
and they have to cover it. It's almost like they begrudgingly cover it, and they want to make sure that they get the only credit they give. And I think it's right to give them the most of the credit is our military itself, but they absolutely will not give Donald Trump one iota of credit.
Well, you brought up something. I hope more and more people understand this. The media is working against the very foundational fabric of this nation, the constitutional republic. They're working to change it with the Zoran Madanis, with the AOCs, with the Bernie Sanders, and tell you how terrible this country is and want to tear it down, and why anybody watches any legacy media. And I'm talking about Fox too. I think the best thing to do is watch podcasts like ours, get real information, and learn about where we're heading as a country. We're at a crossroads here. We can go down the path that the media wants to paint this picture of how bad Trump is and everything he's doing is bad, or you can get real information, make your own decision and join a coalition of people that said, we're not going to go this way. We're not going to listen to this. Listen to what the media said, especially the left liberal on COVID. You know, if you don't get a shot for the COVID shot, you deserve to die. If you don't get a shot, you're killing people. You know, there's so much disinformation out there, and you got to wonder why they're doing it, because it's not building America stronger. It's tearing it apart, and they foment that. And I have no use for those people in the media.
I hear you. Well,
other than you and I.
Yeah, that's why they need to like what we're doing, share what we're doing, make that call to Freddie to support the show. And I tell people all the time, give this show a try. If you like it, give it as an assignment to, email people, send them links, give your kids and grandkids an assignment to watch our show for, 3 or 4 times. And I think if they do, they'll actually like it and see that we're actually fair, and that our only mission is to basically make sure we don't have to man the ramparts again. We stay on the political ramparts, and a lot of people don't even know what the word rampart means. Which watch our show and you'll figure that out as well. But
before you go on though, John, I can't stress this enough. You don't have to own a business to support the show. Send it through your chain of networks. Donate, send money here to keep this show on the air. We'll promote your name. We'll promote whatever you want us to promote to move this message forward, because we really are at a major crossroad here. I mean, all you have to do is look at what happened in Virginia last week, and listen to Hakeem Jeffries. We're at war with the Republicans. I don't want to be at war with anybody. I want to get along together. And if he's at war with us, not a lot's going to get accomplished until they crush one side. I want to work with the other side. I want to work with people. I want to work with all Americans to make this country stronger for the next generations. It is our duty and it is our responsibility to do that. We can't do it without your help.
Absolutely. Well, number 2 on my list, and they're not in a particular order other than that first one, the no nuke, is that I think that some things have been exposed during this Epic Fury
Wasn't Eric
1.
Swalwell, was it? Did he
Yeah,
get exposed again?
yeah. I hope he's not exposed too much, but we might talk about him later in the show. We talked
No,
about,
it's okay.
but yeah. But I think our allies, or lack thereof, for instance, NATO has been really exposed. I mean, Trump kind of exposed NATO in his first term, but it's really exposed it now that they're not only really not that supportive of us, but they're a paper tiger in itself.
They sure are. I loved it when we had the hearing on Trump. Trump won his first administration when Republicans and Democrats were just bashing him for how he's ruined that relationship with NATO. It needed to be. I mean, they needed to be shaken up, and he did that. And NATO's a lot stronger now. And again, like you said, when you get checking alliances with people and your friendships with people, this is a good test because you're really finding out who are your friends. Was NATO just a free ride that they were just hanging on our coattails because they knew we were paying the majority of that and that we had these bases? But when it comes time for the need for those countries, they're like, oh, we don't know if we want to do that. This is politics, John. I had people when I ran my first time, probably all the times, but what they said is, I really like what you're saying, and I'm going to support you, but I'm not going to tell anybody. That's NATO. We like you, but we're not going to tell anybody. And we see this all the time. When my wife, Carolyn, chaired the First Ladies Luncheon, first term of Trump with Melania, she couldn't get any corporate donors for the First Ladies Luncheon. We had big cruise lines eventually says, we're going to give you some money, but we don't want any credit for it. We don't want to be related to you. And I mean, that's just, you can count on those people when you're in a tough situation that they're going to come help you. And I think that's been exposed, like you said, with NATO in the current situation.
Well, you mentioned your friends, and something my old daddy used to tell me. He said, if you can count your true friends on one hand, all 5 fingers, you're actually pretty lucky. And your true friends are people who are with you through thick and thin, who are there when you're up, when you're down, when you're in the middle of that if you got 5 of them, then you are a very fortunate person. And
that's true. That is so true.
The same way works for our country, because the one true friend and ally, and I always say a difference between an ally and a friend is an ally joins with you when it's in your mutual interest. And I'm not knocking that. But a friend and ally is with you even if you're wrong sometimes, and really I think Israel has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are our best friend and ally, period, I think.
Well, I'd have to agree with that. Israel's getting bashed a lot right now. We've got the common heritage that takes us all the way back since the beginning of time as far as civilized nations. I don't know if that's the right word, but as the Judeo-Christian principles that have come out of that. You look at the birthplace of Jesus Christ, you look at where our country was founded on, why the pilgrims came here was for religious freedom. And so this country was founded on those principles, and it wouldn't have started had the Jewish people nation not been there. And so, we've been hand in hand all along, and we've got to pull together with like-minded people. Keep in mind that book I keep referencing, The Miracle of Freedom, the 7 tipping points that saved the world. What you and I experience today, the liberties and freedoms we have, and the people around the world that have that is a very, very small proportion of the world population. Less than 4.5% of the people on the planet have ever experienced that since the beginning of time. That's what this is about, John. And 80% of us are alive that have experienced that liberty and freedom that we've been blessed with. And that's really is what this all is about. It's not about fighting Iran. It's about the liberties and freedoms. And what system are you going to follow? Are you going to follow the theocracy of an Ayatollah that kills 30 to 40,000 of their own people that want freedom? Or are you going to follow a Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un or a Vladimir Putin? It comes down to a constitutional republic that are going to protect our God-given rights, not people like Tim Kaine out of Virginia that says your rights come from government. That is what communism is.
Yeah, well, you mentioned freedom, and one of the things that really gets me is people, and this is where people are both ignorant and apathetic. And ignorance just means you don't know something. It doesn't necessarily mean you're stupid. But people are ignorant about history and especially freedom. They think that freedom has been around since the dawn of time. It absolutely has not. It's only been the freedom that we know in the United States has never been before that we know of, unless there's a history we're unaware of. But if you look at it, there's been flickers of freedom during our history, during the world history. I mean, Greece had a little flicker of it, but it's always been extinguished completely. And for the vast majority of our time on earth here, we have been under various forms of tyranny and dictatorship and royalty and all that kind of stuff. A freedom to choose your government and to choose a government that you are protected from, which is supposedly what's happening here, has never really been done before us.
Well, it hasn't. It really hasn't. And that's the thing that people just don't understand how precious what we have is. And the left and the media just want to say, oh, America is so bad, it's oppressive. Give me a break. Today in Afghanistan, think of what we did in Afghanistan. I mean, I didn't think we should have been involved in that. But for 20 years, we were building schools, getting people to go to school. We were having women go to school because the Taliban do not allow women to go to school. They can go up to the 5th grade. Then after that, they're pregnant and raising families and doing the laborious chores that they do in an undeveloped country. So we put in these schools. Women were going to school. They were graduating. And as soon as we pulled out of there, and Abbeygate happened where our military, 12 soldiers got killed. The Taliban went back in power. They eliminated the school and they chastised any woman that was going to school. And now they're walking around with burqa. There's an active slave market over there. There's an active slave market in Libya and throughout Africa in those countries there that are war torn. And so this is going on right now in this world. South America and some of the countries there. The Asian countries, there's active slavery going on right now. And people want to bash this country. Give me a break. They better embrace this country. If you don't like it, hold your nose because it stinks so bad for you. But you better embrace that this system survives. If not, what we know as humanity will not survive. And I'm telling you right now, I'm hearing up in Washington that the world is forever going to change in the near future.
Yeah, well, that's a scary thought, depending on how that change comes. Well, I got a quite a bit more things on the list.
Sorry about that. I got off on a rant there.
No, you're fine. I just want to go ahead and take a quick commercial break so we don't chop this up too much, and we'll come back and pick up on it, because the things that have happened in the Iran war, I think, are significant not only for the moment, but I also think if you look at it, take a deeper dive, they have implications across history as well. So we're going to take that break. Remember, make that call Freddie, check it. We'll come right back. But Ted, take us out.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think the most important thing that you can do for us and do for getting this message out is share this email with people. And like I said, you don't have to own a business to support this program. You can support it by sharing it. Feel free to send money into the number that you're going to see here in a minute. We'll see you in a moment.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
And we're back here at the Political Pirate Podcast here with Ted Yoho, our captain, and yours truly, the old salty dog. But before we go any further, Ted, we quite often broadcast on Mondays from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, and we just saw an advertisement of one of our sponsors, which happens to be the old ball coach. But I want to give him a shout out for a belated happy birthday to none other than SS Steve Spurrier, the old head ball coach. My understanding is he just turned a spry 81. Happy birthday, Coach.
Happy birthday, Coach. Let's sing the John Boehner birthday song. This is your birthday song. It doesn't last too long. Hey.
I like that. That's pretty good, man. Well, back when we went to break, we were talking about some positives that have come out of Epic Fury. And, the top of the list was no nukes and all that. But third on my list here is the things that have been exposed during that is the strength in a positive way, the strength of our USA and started Trump's first term and now into his second term, from 45 to 47. Everybody knows the difference. The strength of our energy independence, Ted, has really begun to shine. That President Trump has positioned the United States of America that we are not immune from price hikes that are the world oil market, but actually shortages of oil. We're pretty much immune from that right now.
We really are. And this is a bone of contention. When I'm president, what we need to have an American agenda. And on top of that list should be energy security and independence. We have enough oil for this nation to run for hundreds of years. We've got over 150 years of just natural gas. And, we should get to a point where whatever happens on the outside world doesn't affect us here. Unfortunately, oil is on a world market. So what happens over there? And this is another reason, you think of Iran. In 1974, the oil embargoes came and our gas prices doubled or tripled, and you were rationed to 10 gallons of gas you could only buy on the odd or even day with the last digit corresponding on your license plate. And I lived through that. You lived through that. And here we are 47 years later. Iran is still dictating oil and the price of that because of their nonsense. It needs to go away. And Trump's on the right track.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I say, the strength of our independence. And here's the thing, too, Ted, and I don't talk about this enough probably, but, the whole Green New Deal and all that kind of stuff. To me, a lot of it's idiotic. But here's the thing. It kind of pits conservatives like you and I into a corner where somehow we're opposed to alternative energy, which you and I have not really talked about it too much, but I'd like to get your thought on it. I'm not opposed to alternative energy at all. What I'm opposed to is false markets, that kind of thing, creating markets that don't really exist, that are propped up by government. But absolutely, we need to wean ourselves over a period of time,
absolutely,
whether it's 200, 500, or 1,000 years off of oil, because for one thing, it will run out at one point. The other is there's so many things that can be made from it beyond just running your car up and down the road that we need to be better stewards of that. But this idea that we're going to be able to eliminate the carbon energy, by 2035, I think is what Biden had us on track for, is ludicrous. It's never been possible. It is totally idiotic to pursue it that way. But I'm not opposed to alternative energy. I'm just a realist.
You are. You're just you see the writing on the wall. You can't live without oil. For these people that say, "Oh, we're going all green, cars are going to be eliminated, petroleum gas run cars." In my book, I've got a chapter on this. And you brought up a very salient point that's very important of how we've got to shift the mindset and what we should focus on in Congress, the government, the people mindset, the citizens. We need an American agenda. And that American agenda, you brought up a good one, energy. The American agenda for energy is that this country should be energy independent and secure for 50 years into the future at all times. 50 years into the future. All right. And by doing that, if that's the mission, our goal is that. I don't care how you get there, John. I don't care if it's green energy, if it's nuclear, if it's hydrogen. Congress needs to come together, not fight over how you get there, fight over how you're going to make America energy independent. Think of what would happen if we focus on energy independence for America for 50 years into the future, and you put into projections of growth and, all these other things, AI, with all the power they're going to need. So our focus is to be energy independent. Now, Congress, their fight is not over green versus petroleum. Their fight is, How do we make this happen? And if we mandate that by the American people, by voting people in there that'll do that, this country will be better off. Think of the new technologies. Think of the research and development. Think of the new careers, the new jobs that'll be created in that kind of a momentum, instead of saying, I'm going green, and the other side says, no, I'm going petroleum. And you get the political fight, and then it comes down to politics. Oh, they're against climate change. They're against this, and these other ones. Oh, they're against. They're going to strap the American people and put them on government subsidies to have green energy. And you see how we changed the dynamics. I'm not fighting over how. I'm fighting over what we're going to do, and that should be where Congress is focusing on. And we can achieve that within about 2 or 3 years, to have a policy to where if we're energy independent and secure, I don't care what happens in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, it's amazing what the Congress is actually focused on. And I said Congress. I didn't say the Democrats. I mean, they're in the class on their own, but Congress is focused on a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with improving the security of the United States of America.
They really not. I mean, we're $39 trillion in debt, spending over $3 billion a day in interest. That's $1 trillion a year, over $1 trillion a year just in interest. I've been there. You can't do that. It's non-sustainable, and the day of reckoning is coming. We talked about austerity measures. Austerity measures is when you have to cut things because you're forced to. That's already happening. You look at how much they put into the president's request for the military, $1.4 trillion, almost about 1.5 times more than we've ever spent before. But they're cutting programs behind the scenes. Look at what they've done with USAID and the assistance programs and research and development. They're cutting these programs because those are easy to cut because they don't really fall on the American taxpayers in general. Wait till they start cutting Medicare, Social Security, and food stamps or social programs. Those things are coming if we don't get this under control. And we're going through a flux with what's going on in the Middle East. Look at what's going on with Ukraine. I mean, these are all things that are upsetting the balance that we've had since World War II as far as the peace dividend. The peace dividend is coming to an end.
Yeah, well, and heaven forbid, even out in California, they may actually cut breast implants from illegal alien homeless transvestites. I mean, who knows what's on the chopping block, Ted?
They probably already chopped that off too.
Well, one of the things, and we'll move on, and you've mentioned it already, but the greatness of our military and the people that serve has just been exposed in a beautiful way, how great these people are, and they truly are heroes. And we cannot praise both the apparatus of it and especially the men and women who actually serve daily. We cannot
absolutely
praise them enough.
That's right. We sure can. Thank you all.
So another thing that kind of happened this week, President Trump has been shuffling people in and out of the White House, dignitaries and stuff. Well, he had a meeting with Lebanese officials and Israeli officials this week, and it looks like there's going to be an extended ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. They've had one for a couple of weeks. People tend to forget that Lebanon, the Lebanese government, has never been able to control Hezbollah, which is in there and all that. So,
which is an Iranian-backed proxy.
Absolutely. And I say all that to say, one of the things that could come out of all of this death and dying in Iran, and more to come, I'm sure, is an actual lasting peace in that area. And we're on the verge of that. I hope we can get to it. What are your thoughts on that?
I would love to see lasting peace there, but the history ain't too good on that, John, when you go back 3,000-4,000 years ago. But wouldn't that be a novel idea if we were able to do that? The bright spot is that's the first time in over 40 years where you've had Lebanese officials meet with the Israeli officials to work out something. And you look at what Trump did with the Abraham Accords, to be able to bring that group together when he did that in his first term is historic. And if we can get these other countries, these other Middle Eastern countries, to join into the Abraham Accord and make it a lasting peace, think how the world would change if we started investing in people instead of armaments and trying to blow up people and tear things apart. it would be a fulfillment of our destiny, I think, if we did that as a humanity.
Yeah, it would be. And, another thing, talking about how people don't really understand history, and this is history within the last couple of 100 years. People think that, that Trump now is the first one to have issues with an Islamic nation, which is absolutely crazy. But I'm not going to sing for you, Ted, but I sang a little on the show Monday. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, which is the Marines' anthem. Tripoli was the first time Thomas Jefferson, of all people, sent the first time the Marines ever fought on soil outside the United States of America was against an Islamic nation in Tripoli to try to control the pirate attacks in the Mediterranean. So we have a long history of battling Islamic fundamentalists, period, and people seem to forget that.
They really do. I mean, it's interesting when you read the history of the United States, that was the first time they did that. And they tried to negotiate with the people in Tripoli, the Sultan over there. And they said, "Why are you doing that?" He goes, "Because we can," basically. And, kudos to the Congress back then and Jefferson. Adams is the one that really started building up the Navy on the one term he had. And, they used it for the right reason. They went in there and said no more. And, but you talk about history repeating itself. Look at what the Somalian pirates were doing. They're pirating in the 21st century. And it's just like, where's the drone? Just explode that boat, get it out of here, and just say, we're not playing that game.
Well, you have to give the Somalis credit, though, Ted, because they figured out that it's easier to pirate in Minnesota than it is in Africa. So they've moved a lot of their piracy operation to the United States, and they're not even on the shores anymore. So you got to give them a little bit of
easy
of
money taking it. It just. And thanks to Ilhan Omar for leading that. It was one of her bills that, kind of helped really fund that with the food pantries and the educational system. Again, there's that faction in America that is working against America. They want to tear it down. Make no mistake about this. It's the AOCs, it's the Iona Presleys, it's the Rashid Tlaibs, the Ilhan Omar. And the media is helping them. And then you get the dark money, like Roy Singham out of China, who is a billionaire, and then Bernie Sanders and, all these people on the left. They want to tear this country down. And, to me, that's just that's a red line. It will not happen on our watch. Right, John?
Absolutely. But Ted, I got to tell you, far be it for me to be critical of the captain, but I gotta tell you, you're not being very sympathetic here you mentioned Ilhan Omar, and the poor lady went from $30 million in the bank, so to speak, to down to less than $100,000 now on a clerical accounting error that she said was a mistake. I wish my accountant would make a mistake and make me have $30 million. But so you're being a little bit harsh.
Well, what about when the IRS comes and you didn't pay enough? So, that's just a clerical error. Just forget it. Don't worry about it.
It's a Ilhan Omar thing. But, you mentioned something. You always talk about China. And this just spurred another thing in me. China, the way they're looking at Iran, to me, is a bit arrogant in this sense that they China's been invaded throughout their history multiple times. There's been incredible atrocities committed over there and everything else. But are they under an illusion? Because they're pretty smart. But are they under an illusion that a nuclear powered Iran wouldn't ultimately one day, whether it's 10 years or 100 years from now, actually attack them too? I mean, you really believe that if the Islamic fundamentalists were to take over the world's oil supply that they have there and control that and all get nukes and everything else, that they're just going to be peaceful and leave China alone? No way.
No way. There's that Xinjiang region of China where the Uyghurs are, and the Uyghurs are a Muslim Chinese sect that's been there for very, very, very long time. And China is routinely systematically going through there and eliminating them. They're taking the men, making them shave their beards off, putting them in re-education camps. Why they put Chinese Han soldiers, Han being the ethnic majority in China, putting them in their house, raping their wives. And they wind up, the ones that don't fall into suit and become re-educated on Xi thought. Xi Jinping has written, his thought that China, it's like the ideal thought for the Chinese. If they don't follow that, they go to the armed crematoriums. Crematorium is where you burn dead people.
And they probably harvest their organs right before that.
So what I want to know is, why do you have to have an armed crematorium for dead people? It's because they're taking live people there. And we had hearings on this. This is not just I'm just not saying this stuff. This is stuff that's factual. And, where's the press? Where's the media? Where's the outrage for this?
Yeah. Speaking of outrage, let's move on to another story that there's not near enough outrage about this. There was silence on the left for a minute, and now they're actually defending the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPL indictment that just came out. Ted, the investigation started under Joe Biden's DOJ, but was squashed and then picked up by the Trump administration. In case people aren't paying attention to this, the Southern Poverty Law Center, now I'm not saying it years ago, whether they were good or bad or whatever, but their mission was basically to bring attention to white supremacist groups, other groups like that, that were opposed to minorities and all of that kind of stuff. Sounds like a good thing to do, but whether they were ever good or not could be debated. But they have certainly morphed into a total political organization that pushes an agenda, which appears their agenda is to divide America and to make money off of it. What are your thoughts about that in general, Ted? What's happening with that?
I think it's a good thing that they're going after that. That organization has gotten taken over by the liberal progressives, the people that are tearing this country down. And it's not just our people; it's foreign countries are putting money into this, because they are the ones that get behind a lot of these protests. If you look at Charlottesville, the Southern Poverty Law Center was recruiting people there. And then the people they recruited were putting out hate speech and racist speech on their websites, recruiting people to show up. And this was paid for by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And it went through, they gave money to a person that gave it to another person, and they hid this money trail. And then they recruit these people, and then they cause the violence. And then they say, oh, look, the white supremacists. So they go after that. The Southern Poverty Law Center has grown beyond what they're supposed to do, and they've been hijacked. When they start attacking Christian parents for standing up in school boards around the country and calling them radicals, white supremacist radicals, and domestic terrorists, their mission is over. They need to be hammered, is what they need to be.
So listen to you. I think what you're really saying here is some advice to Jesse Smollett, that guy, because he should have learned from the Southern Poverty Law Center about hiring people to attack you for a political agenda. He could have done it much better. But if I mentioned earlier,
good point there, John.
I have one or two every now and then. I mentioned earlier that the Department of Justice under Biden started this investigation, but then dropped it. And you mentioned Charlottesville. So I want to play this video of Joe Biden, because he tells you in a way reason why they dropped the investigation. Check this out and we'll come right back.
Sure.
In 2020, because of what I saw in Charlottesville in August of 2017, extremists coming out of the woods, carrying torches, their veins bulging from their necks, carrying Nazi swastikas, and chanting the same exact anti-Semitic bile that was heard in Germany in the early 30s. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and the Ku Klux Klan, so emboldened by a president then in the White House that they saw as an ally.
Oh, Ted, there you have Joe Biden. Essentially, he said this many times, including in his announcement that he was running for president to start with, that it was Charlottesville and, of course, the good people on both sides hoax. We know all about that, that inspired him to run for president. And he even said it during his convention speech when he was running again. He said it multiple times. What are your thoughts on all that?
I think Joe Biden, if you look in the dictionary for the definition of a useful idiot, they would show Joe Biden as number one. I'm glad he got a different message to run on that and motivated him to run. It wasn't God, country, and family and the greatness of America, but he changed his message from his first run, because his first run, remember, was about Corn Pop, his good buddy Corn Pop.
Yeah.
And so he changed his message. Let's look at the Southern Poverty Law Center. His rhetoric, his being Joe Biden, the guy is just a political hack. He's, like I said, a useful idiot. Somebody told him what to say, and he reads it off the monitor when he can read. But if you look at what they have funded, more than $3 million in funds to white supremacists and extremist groups, $1 million to the National Alliance affiliate, $300,000 to the Aryan Nations affiliate, $270,000 to the Unite the Right members, and then $140,000 former National Alliance chairman. And this is all to fuel hatred and cause division. And this is all a ploy, and this is all supported by bad money. That they're not trying to make America stronger; they're trying to divide America, and they're funding the very things that Joe Biden said that happened in Charlottesville. It's funded by the left, probably the billionaire class. You know what I mean?
The billionaires. Well, it's what's interesting. I always talk about follow the money, and I say, like the movie, all about the Benjamins, baby. But prior to Charlottesville, the coffers at the Southern Poverty Law Center were basically empty. After that, now they've got almost 800 million on hand right now. So, make your own conclusions about that.
Well, look at the people funding that. They're all the left progressive people or left progressive organizations. And there's a lot of money funneled through nations that want to tear this country down, that go through straw people. The money goes to the person that's here in this country, and then they fund these toxic organizations.
Well, I agree with you in general, but I looked through some of their donor lists, and yes, they are the who's who of the left, billionaires and all that. But guess who else is on there?
Corporations.
Chick-fil-A donated to them, and they're very conservative in that owner and all that. I think, and I'm not necessarily saying he donated for nefarious causes. I'm simply saying that you look at Black Lives Matter, some of those groups, a lot of these corporate entities got caught up in that because they were afraid not to, in a way, but so I agree with you. The majority of it is the who's who of the left, but there's a lot of corporate stuff to go around. But I wanted to say something about what Biden said in his thing, point out two things. One, he talked about how brazen they were, and he said that bulging, their veins bulging in that, repeated that over and over throughout the course of his presidential career. But he mentioned that they were so brazen they didn't have hoods. And I thought about it when I saw that I know why they didn't have hoods, so they could identify these are the people we need to pay.
That's right.
And then the other thing that got me, when he talked about anti-Semitism like we've never seen before, like Nazi Germany. And I'm like, really? I mean,
yeah,
the only
really.
way you see these protesters that are like Nazi Germany type people are in the and anti-Semitic are Democrat rallies now. They're being paid to protest everywhere you go. The college campuses, all of that stuff. If you want to see anti-Semitism, don't look at the Proud Boys. Look at the hardcore left, or even the moderate. There's now, Ted, and I'm on a rant, but I'm going to finish it real quick. There's now this podcaster, and we'll maybe talk about him next week, that has millions of followers that the Democrats who are running for office can't wait to get on his show and have him on it. And he literally says that we deserve 9/11, that he's upset that the Russians lost the Cold War. He said that we deserve to be attacked. He said that recently, guy, the healthcare executive that got assassinated with United Healthcare, that it was a good thing and that young people should do more of that. And the Democrats have totally embraced this guy.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, how can we
It's just,
change that much in America? How can we be that far off base? And I guess the answer is ignorance. People are just ignorant about what these people are doing. They're not looking to build this nation. They're looking to tear it down. And they're using these people like they use Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as useful idiots. And, there is going to be a day of reckoning, and let's hope it's short and over quickly. Um, and the good will triumph on this. And I hope we can bypass that. I hope it doesn't happen. But when you have Southern Poverty Law Center and people like the likes of Joe Biden and the people on the left supporting these things, we're at a point now. I just got back from Congress from my trip up in D.C., and I have never seen this before. There were a lot of Islamic type of people with hijabs and their long dresses, and walking around Congress in the halls of the office buildings, protesting against Israel. It should not be allowed. In fact, I'm against all protests in the congressional office. If you're going to protest, go outside and protest. It disrupts business. It puts people at threat. How long before somebody comes in with an IED and ignites it in there and blows it up? These things are going on right now, and I've never seen that before, John. I was there for 8 years. That's my only time reference to talk about that. But I have never seen that. But it was in mass this time, and they're protesting against Israel.
well, you know what? I was thinking about this earlier in the show when you were talking, but the difference between politicians now and back in the day, going back, we talked about, Thomas Jefferson and stuff like that. They had very strong differences of opinions on a
Sure.
lot of things, but they were all America first people. They weren't MAGA, but for the most part, our leaders, even on totally opposite sides, even debating the Civil War stuff, they actually at their core were pro-American. Now, were they right on every issue? No, absolutely not. But they did want America to be great. And it doesn't seem that way right now.
Well, it doesn't. And I'm reading that book on Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow. And you're absolutely right. The factions had started, the parties, the Republicans and the Federalists started. And Jefferson was a Republican in that sense. And Alexander Hamilton was a Federalist. And they both had a great vision for America, but their vision was different. And I think that is something that's gone throughout history, and it's happening right now. The conservatives love America, God, country, family, the Constitution. The people on the left, they love America, but they don't love it in its present form. They want to change it because they think it's wrong. So both sides love the country. They just love it differently. And, the way they want to love it is anti-American, in my view. And it's against, look at what they did with the open borders. They allowed open borders. 11 to 22 million people came here illegally. And I was listening to a Wall Street Journal interview, and the lady was saying how people want to abolish ICE because they kill Americans. Well, they wouldn't have had to kill Americans had the Democrats followed the rule of law and had organized legal immigration instead of just flooding the gates. And so ICE is there only as a symptom or as an effect of the open borders. And so they create a problem, and then when you go to correct it, they chastise the people trying to correct it. And those are the people that want to be in charge. No, all you have to do is go back and look at where America was under Biden and Harris. Do you really want that for your future, your kids? I don't. The people that I know that love America the way I do, they don't want any of that.
Yeah, well, we're about out of time, but I just say this, and I'll turn it back to you, Ted, to take us out. I say it all the time, but two of my favorite people in history, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin, when they asked what happened with the Constitutional Convention, the lady said, "What'd you give us?" He said, "A republic if you," talking about you, we the people can keep it. And then Thomas Jefferson famously said, if you want to be both ignorant and free, you want what never was and never will be. And to me, that is the essence of why you and I are doing the show that we're doing, because it's up to we the people, and we got to be educated, motivated, and activated. And I hope you like what we're doing. Share what we're doing far and wide. Make that call Freddie, because we need to keep this message going, because if we don't keep it going, you can't depend on even Fox News to keep it going, let alone all the rest of those clown shows out there. Ted, take us out, sir.
No, we really are. We're at that split in America. You know, I mean, perfect example is Madami in the excuse me, in New York, putting a wealth tax in there. When you look at the guy he highlighted was Ken Griffin from Citicorp, I think it is. He's thinking about leaving. Ken Griffin is thinking about leaving and moving to Florida. Guy's got 6,000 highly paid construction jobs that they want to do, 15,000 permanent jobs. He's donated over $650 million to charities in New York. And these are the people that Madami wants to go after because they're bad. They're bad people, you know, and so they're going after the very things that make America great. And that's the divide in this country. And that's what we want to educate people on. And that's why we thank you for watching. Share the message far and wide. And John, you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
So who was that gentleman what was his name?
Ken Griffin.
Ken Griffin. So Mr. Griffin, or any of your compadres, if you're listening and you want to come to Florida, you want to save the country, you don't have to do a big check. Just shake the couch cushions in your office, and there'll be enough there to empower us into the future. Ted, have a great weekend, my friend.
Take care. Yep. God bless everybody. Thanks for watching.